You're listening to Raederle Rambling. Today I'm thinking a lot about the law of attraction and how it relates to the concept of the law of mirroring and electromagnetic fields. Any of us who practice the law of attraction practices, we know that we can manifest things through positive focus. Anyone who's done a lot of meditation knows that life just mysteriously gets better when you meditate a lot, but in ways that you can't explain. So it makes sense that your behavior changes as a result of meditation or affirmations or creating a vision board, because these things will maybe relax you or get you focused on what really matters to you. What's really hard to explain is those things that seem like a miracle. For example, what happened? How do you explain it that one day I was focusing on how I needed to get on television in order to move my career forward, and then a week later I'm at a Halloween party, and for the very first time, actually for the only time in my life, I met somebody who told me that they had that they had a television station, and that it was focused on the subject of health, which was primarily what I was making books about at the time. And she invited me to be on her TV station, and I actually didn't end up following through on that. But how did that happen? How did she just end up at the same Halloween party as me? How did my positive thinking create that? Or take when I was on Kauai Island in 2013. One morning, I woke up and I thought, I really want a smoothie. I miss having smoothies, but I can't make a smoothie because I'm on this island and I don't own a blender here, and I didn't bring one with me in my suitcase. But I was just thinking, I really want one. And then half an hour later, the person who owns the land is walking towards me with a Vitamix blender. She's like, I just was thinking that you might, want some smoothies while you're here, so you can borrow this Vitamix the whole time you're here. I mean, how do you explain that? So some people explain that by saying, well, God did it, or that there's some mysterious power involved. Well, what if that mysterious power was simply electromagnetic fields? We know that meditation changes what your brain waves are doing. We know that your heart generates a pretty impressive electromagnetic field that is discernible outside the body with various instruments. There are even, documentaries and studies on these subjects. We also know that, cell phones work on electromagnetic fields. The sunlight works on electromagnetic fields. These fields are capable of traveling extremely far distances extremely fast. What if it's possible to create electromagnetic fields that are so subtle that our technology can't yet discern them, can't yet pick them out? So what if your mind is creating fields that travel infinitely far, and we just don't yet have the technology to measure these fields? It doesn't mean that they don't exist or that they're mystical or magical. They could be scientifically explainable. And you put these fields out there, and perhaps they interact with other people's fields. So my field interacted with the woman who had the blender's field, and that resulted in her bringing me a blender. It's just a theory. I can't say I have proof. I don't have the instruments or the technology to prove it. Well, it was just floating around in my head today, and I thought I would ramble about it for your benefit. I've recently been learning about the limbic system of the brain, which is the part of our brain that processes emotion. Any of us who practice law of attraction know that it is emotion that really generates change in your life. It's that heartfelt prayer that you make while you're crying that is mysteriously answered. So for example, when I was 16, I was crying and I was just emotionally desperate and a wreck. And I thought, I'm just going to start praying. And I wasn't a particularly religious person, but I figured, hey, why not? If the prayer gets answered, then that's awesome. And so I was crying and saying, I just don't understand why life is worth living. I don't see what the point of being an honest person is, and I'm on the verge of giving up. I asked Jesus specifically, I said, Jesus, if you are out there listening to me, and if there is any point in being on this planet, please show it to me. Like, show me your people, show me the goodness in the world, because I'm just not seeing it, and I'm on the verge of giving up. 1 month later, I was at an open mic, and I got invited to a commune, and I didn't really understand what a commune was, but I accepted the invite, and I visited. And there were these people there singing and dancing, and they were very, very happy. And I didn't understand why they dressed differently or what they were singing about. But I was finally told that what they were singing about, Yahshua, was Jesus. And these people actually do think of themselves literally as Jesus people. And they had just beautiful lives living on this commune. They sang and they danced every Saturday, and they made food together every Sunday. And I'd never seen children so happy or like well behaved, well adjusted to their life. Like they never squabbled or yelled in any of the time that I was there. I came back to visit other times. And so that prayer was literally answered. I got to meet Jesus's people and see the good in the world in the middle of a life that was otherwise extremely troubling. Age 16 is when I developed stomach ulcers and many other conditions because of how stressed out, miserable, and unhealthy my life was at the time. So that's another example of emotion generating an external change. My emotion went into the prayer, that went into a thought form and an intention that somehow went out into the universe, and then brought this woman to me to approach me at the open mic and to invite me to come see her commune. I mean, you could say, oh, well, I wouldn't have been at that open mic somehow if I hadn't made the prayer. And maybe that's true. Maybe I would have somehow decided not to go to the open mic, but that still leaves the question of how I knew to go there. So anyway, back to the limbic system. The limbic system is something that processes sensory information. So it says, I smell this, I feel this, I hear that. And is any of this a problem? Is any of this something I should be afraid of? Should I be sending the amygdala messages of warning about what I'm experiencing? It also can send messages to the hypothalamus in terms of like, should any stress hormones be produced? And over the last few years, I've been learning about being a highly sensitive person and what that looks like genetically, as well as how it shows up. I've also been learning about autism and Asperger's and what that looks like biologically and how that shows up. I have been identifying as being both a highly sensitive person and somebody who is a high-functioning autism spectrum person. I also have had extreme sensitivities around chemicals and had other bizarre, unexplained sensitivities such as to sunlight. I was thinking these things were all related somehow, but recently I've begun a program for retraining my limbic system to not be afraid of sensory stimuli. I recently learned that it's been proposed that people who have autism actually have extra plasticity in their brain. Highly sensitive people actually produce less serotonin, which causes memories for some reason that I don't completely understand to be imprinted more deeply. Now, if these things are all true, then that might imply that people who are on the autism spectrum and or highly sensitive might be more prone to being traumatized. And when you are traumatized, this causes your limbic system to identify sensory data, identify what happened during the trauma and then identify it again in the present moment. And then if any of that sensory data lines up, like if there's the same smell or if there's the same tone of voice or if there's the same particular form of light even, then you react to it. And when the stress hormones are released, you can have really major reactions. You can have a stomach ache or a splitting headache. Even migraines can be a result of your limbic system identifying sensory information and saying this sensation is a problem. And it doesn't even have to be conscious. You don't have to consciously identify something as being objectionable or have a trigger that you're aware of in order to have a physical response. So with multiple chemical sensitivities, known as MCS, what is happening for these people, and myself included, is you start getting a stomachache or a headache in response to a chemical, and you assume that the chemical is making you sick. And this causes you to panic and stress out more and try to avoid the situation, which reinforces the idea that your limbic system should respond in this way. You're basically sending the message to your limbic system over and over again, this chemical is a problem. But what's funny is that the limbic system is actually creating a response. So this all goes back to some traumatic experience where you literally did get chemically damaged. There might have been a carpet that you were tearing up, or there might have been a floor that you were laying down, but you got really exposed to some really nasty chemicals. And then from then on, you start reacting to chemicals as a problem because that first time it really was a big problem for your body. But then later it's not actually. Like you're smelling somebody's lip balm or something, or somebody with perfume walks by you and all of a sudden you have a splitting headache and you feel dizzy. that actually is a response that your limbic system is generating. And even if you're not consciously aware of that odor, you will respond to it before you even notice the smell, because your limbic system is trained to believe that it's a problem that it has to react to with stress hormones. This all got me wondering if people who are highly sensitive or on the autism spectrum manifest things differently than most other people, because it's the part of your brain that's processing sensory information and generating emotional responses in the form of hormones that is also going to be responsible for a lot of what you manifest in the world. What you are traumatized by, what you're attached to, what you're motivated towards, what you're afraid of, all of that has a lot to do with what you manifest in your life. The man who wrote the Surrender Experiment had an incredible series of manifestations his entire life. He basically decided to stop fighting life and just thought he would just go with the flow. But he had a background of meditating and doing yoga every day is where he started. And so he was getting his mind into this really relaxed and peaceful state every single day. And by surrendering to life, he was relaxing his limbic system even more. By letting go of trying to make things a certain way, he was letting go of his attachments. By meditating, he was letting go of his mental chatter. By doing yoga, he was relaxing his body and releasing more positive hormones. And you combine all of this, and he is able to manifest a truly, truly remarkable life. I mean, if you want to know all the details, you can read the book, The Surrender Experiment. Why don't most people have that experience? Why don't most people just have opportunities just handed to them one after another that all perfectly line up? I think it's because everyone is still stuck in their trauma loops. They're still stuck in repeating the past over and over again and reinforcing it. Basically, something bad happens, and then you tell a story about how it always goes that way. It's happened to you before, and the brainwaves are actually generating a signal that goes out, and you manifest more experiences that confirm your existing beliefs and confirm your existing trauma, and your body even responds to what's happening by, getting sick in response to certain types of stimuli. What on earth am I actually getting at? Okay, so I just have this theory now that the limbic system in the brain is really key to understanding how manifestation works at a physiological level, because anything that's actually happening will eventually be explained by science. So give it 50 years or 100 years, assuming climate change doesn't wipe us all off the face of the planet, and I bet you there will be a neurological explanation for exactly how to manifest exactly what you want to manifest in your life. This has been an episode of Raederle Rambling. If you enjoyed it, then please subscribe.